Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FDIC, the official podcast of the Faculty Development and Innovation Center at EIU. I'm Kim Ervin, an instructional designer and your host. This podcast series aims to illuminate the path to teaching excellence by sharing insights into instructional design, teaching strategies, and innovation. In this episode, we're diving into andragogy, a term coined by the visionary American educator Malcolm Knowles to encapsulate the theory and practice of adult education. Andragogy can be thought of as a cousin to the well-known pedagogy and represents a distinct approach to education. The word pedagogy reflects the art and science of leading children, embodying a more teacher-directed and centric approach. The word andragogy signifies the art and science of leading and or managing adults. Knowles popularized the term andragogy in the 20th century, emphasizing the self-directed and experience-driven nature of adult learning. In a recent podcast about andragogy, Dr. Luke Hobson, who is a senior instructional designer at MIT, defined andragogy as the science behind how adults learn and defined pedagogy as the science behind how adolescents learn. A link to Dr. Hobson's podcast is available in the show notes if you'd like to listen to another resource about andragogy. Returning to our conversation, at the heart of andragogy is a set of assumptions that guide adults in their learning. Imagine this scenario. If you were to teach a subject to younger learners, your approach would instinctively adjust, right? Andragogy outlines assumptions about adult learning that, when attuned to, can serve as a compass to adjustments you can make to more effectively teach adults. Now, before I continue, I want to pause and address a question that may be on your mind at this moment. What stage of adulthood are those entering higher education in? Do we need to be attuned to assumptions about adult learning in higher education when most of our learners are transitioning directly from secondary education? My belief is this. Traditional learners entering higher education from high school are experiencing a significant transition in their lives. In high school, they had a structured environment with clear rules and schedules. In higher education, they are emerging adults who now have increased autonomy and a more independent lifestyle with responsibilities for managing their schedules. In high school, they most likely experienced a more hands-on approach to teaching, with teachers closely monitoring their progress and providing more individualized attention. In higher education, classes may be larger. Faculty expect students to take initiative in their studies, and the learning environment is more self-directed. The traditional college freshman finds themselves in an environment where they are expected to emerge into adulthood. So for this reason, I advocate the awareness of an approach to teaching and learning based on a foundation of specifically identified assumptions of adult learning, because adults are emerging within our midst and our non-traditional learners already identify with these assumptions. Now that we've touched on what andragogy is and its significance, let's unpack its 6 assumptions. Malcolm Knowles outlines these in his book, The Adult Learner, a Neglected Species. The 6 assumptions range from acknowledging shifts in an adult's self-concept to understanding the impact of adult experiences on learning. And the remaining 4 assumptions revolve around an adult's orientation to learning. They are intrinsic motivation, a desire to solve real-world problems, a readiness to learn, and a compelling need to understand why. Let's discuss all 6 assumptions one at a time. The first assumption I'll cover is acknowledging shifts in an adult's self-concept. As a person grows and matures, their self-concept transitions from one of total dependency to one of increasing self-directedness. Malcolm Knowles advocates a very crucial thing happens to us when we experience this change. We develop a deep psychological need to be perceived by others as being self-directing, and when we find ourselves in situations when we're not allowed to be self-directing, we can experience a tension between the situation and our self-concept. Our reaction can more easily be tainted with resentment and resistance. When the adult self-concept is not perceived as being acknowledged, it can impact an adult's reaction to the learning situation and negatively interfere with the learning process. The decision our students have made to attend our university is a big step towards seeing themselves as self-directed adults. Any learning experience they perceive as putting them in a position of being treated like when they were younger has potential of them experiencing a tension between the learning situation and their self-concept, which can interfere with the learning. One way you can acknowledge this self-concept in your courses is to provide flexible learning paths. This could include options for self-paced assignments, alternative assessment methods, or the opportunity for learners to choose the subject or focus of a project that aligns with their interests and professional goals. A second assumption about adult learners is acknowledging how the role of adult experiences impact their learning. As we mature, we accumulate an expanding reservoir of experience that causes us to become an increasingly rich resource for learning and provide a broadening base to relate new learning. Recognizing that adult learners bring a variety of life experiences to the learning experience, courses can be designed to intentionally tap into the experience of the learners and involve them in analyzing their experience. This may involve creating assignments that allow students to draw connections between course content and their real-world experiences. Faculty can also facilitate class discussions that encourage the sharing of diverse perspectives and insights, leveraging the richness of the adult learners' collective experiences. Acknowledging and integrating life experience into the learning process validates the unique contributions that adult learners bring to the learning experience. Knowles also advocates there is another more subtle reason for emphasizing the utilization of the experience of the adult learner. As young children, we largely identified ourselves in terms of external factors, our family, our community, our school. As we mature, though, we increasingly define ourselves by our experiences. As children, experience is something that happens to us. As adults, our experiences are who we are. So in any learning situation in which an adult's experience is being unintentionally ignored, the adult can perceive this as not just rejecting his experience, but rejecting him as a person. Making use of your learner's experience as a resource for learning conveys respect for your learner, which has a huge impact to positively impact their learning. The remaining 4 assumptions relate to an adult's orientation to learning versus the orientation to learning we had when we were young. They are: adults are intrinsically motivated, they want to learn through solving real-world problems, they have a readiness to learn, and have the need to know why. Since the remaining 4 out of 6 assumptions of andragogy are interrelated, I'll describe each one consecutively and then offer examples of teaching strategies that embody all 4 of these assumptions. First is intrinsic motivation. Adults and those emerging into adulthood seek learning because there is some level of inefficiency in their lives, and they are at least to some level intrinsically motivated to remedy the inefficiency. One inefficiency an adult can experience that drives them to choose additional learning is career prospects. Traditional and non-traditional learners pursue higher education because they believe college degrees open more job opportunities and increase their earning potential in the long run. Another inefficiency might be their own personal fulfillment. Adults pursue higher education because they may want to experience a sense of accomplishment. This intrinsic motivation that stems from the need to remedy an inefficiency leads to the next assumption about adult learners. Adults want to learn through solving real-world problems. As children, we had a subject-centered orientation to learning. Most of what we learned in elementary school had little to do with functioning better as a pre-adolescent. For example, I learned multiplication in the 3rd grade to be eligible to take increased levels of math courses in middle school. For adults and those emerging into adulthood, the orientation to learning tends to be more problem-centered. Adults seek learning because there is some level of inefficiency with their current life situation. So they want learning to be about solving real-world problems so they can function better as an adult. So far, this inefficiency has created intrinsic motivation, the desire to solve real-world problems. The final 2 assumptions are a readiness to learn and a compelling need to know why. The assumption about adults having a readiness to learn is that as we as humans mature, our readiness to learn is decreasingly the product of our biological and academic pressure, and is increasingly the product of the developmental tasks required for the performance of our evolving adult societal role. In a sense, pedagogy assumes that children are ready to learn those things they are asked to learn to benefit their biological and academic development. Andragogy assumes that learners are ready to learn the things they need to learn because of their identified life inefficiency that could be related to upcoming roles in employment, family, and community. The final assumption is an adult's compelling need to understand why. An adult's identified inefficiency has created the intrinsic motivation to be ready to learn through solving real-world problems they will face in life. So, to validate whether their learning is going to help them, they have a deep need to know the why behind your asks. Unlike children who may accept instructions more readily, adults tend to be more engaged and responsive when they see the relevance and purpose of what they are learning. Applying the last four assumptions about adult education that are interrelated, having intrinsic motivation, want to learn through solving real-world problems, have a readiness to learn, and have a need to know why, can take form in a course when faculty intentionally incorporate practical, real-world, authentic applications of the course content into a course. Connecting theoretical concepts taught in a course to real-world scenarios and professional contexts demonstrates to adult and emerging adult learners how the knowledge is immediately applicable and valuable. Integrating case studies, industry examples, current situations and/or events, even a discussion or review of current equipment and/or technology used can further engage adult learners, reinforcing their belief that the course material directly contributes to their personal and professional growth. These four interrelated assumptions can also be demonstrated in a course when the relevance and practical applications of the course content are explicitly highlighted by providing a clear understanding of the reasons behind the learning materials and activities you are asking your learners to engage with. Once the ask is legitimized in the learner's mind, it can enhance motivation and promote a deeper, more meaningful grasp of the subject matter. To help accomplish this, I'm aware of the Transparent Assignment Design Template for Teachers PDF. It's available on the TILT, which stands for Transparency in Learning and Teaching website. A link to this PDF is provided in the show notes. This template includes sections that explain the purpose of the assignment, necessary skills and knowledge to complete the assignment, the tasks the learners should take to complete the assignment, and the criteria for success, such as characteristics of the finished product. You may not choose to use the template as is, but I think it offers a good starting point in the development of your own communication about the why behind the asks you make of the learners in your courses. Also, another place the why can be offered to your learners is in the objectives. For example, an education course includes an objective like this. Learners will be able to review Bloom's taxonomy as a guide to write learning objectives at different hierarchies. A learner might question, why is it important for me to be able to write learning objectives at different hierarchies? One reason might be to distinguish appropriate course versus module level objectives. Adding a brief why or in order to what at the end of a learning objective is another place in the course that can be used to validate to learners the reason why behind all the asks, which can enhance motivation and promote a deeper, more meaningful grasp of the subject matter. To recap, the assumptions about adult education outlined in Malcolm Knowles' theory of andragogy are that adults, 1, have a mature self-concept that they want respected. Adult experiences and the opportunity to share their experiences can positively impact their learning. Adults are intrinsically motivated, they want to solve real-world problems, they have a readiness to learn, and they have a compelling reason to know why. Faculty in higher education aware of the theory of andragogy and its set of assumptions about adult education have a compass to the types of teaching and learning strategies that can be most successful with their learners. If you would like to brainstorm how you can increase your application of assumptions about adult education in your courses, feel free to reach out to me at 217-581-3716 or at kservin@eiu.edu. Thanks for listening and continuing to learn.